Welcome to the VM Workshop. What the VM Workshop is a simple reference application that you can use in order to see different implementations of Model View ViewModel or Presentation Model in right now 5 different type of UI technologies. And so we've got implementation in there for Silverlight, WPF, WebForms, interestingly enough, ASP.NET MVC, Ajax, and WinForms. Now MVC is Model View Controller, but the whole idea of having a view model is kind of intrinsic to MVC. So I included in there for that reason, but also the MVC controller actions that I've built in this application power the MVC UI, but also the Silverlight client. And that's just done with a simple little detection of seeing what kind of type it accepts as it comes in. Now, unlike a lot of these types of blog posts and reference applications and things of this nature, instead of just providing the code in C#, I've done it in VB.NET as well. And I wanted to do that in order to open up the conversation to as many people as possible. If you go to polymorphicpodcast.com/VM workshop, you can go to this page here where you can click on this link down here in order to read about the full-scale write-up of VM Workshop. You can click in here to download the code. If you really like what you see or you just want to talk about it, click on this tweet this link and allow you to link directly into Twitter. And so what I want to do is just give you a quick run through of what you'll find in VM Workshop. So what you'll find within the workshop is basically a domain layer. We've got the Silverlight Web, WinForms, and WPF. Within the web project, you'll find demos for the Ajax implementation, the WebForms, the Silverlight, and then also this is an MVC application, so you can come into the controllers and see how it's implemented for ASP.NET MVC. So those 4 items exist within the web project. And then we have the WinForms and the WPF. Within the domain model here, we have our interface for the product repository. We've got some classes here that are especially tailored for the view of our domain model, and just some extra utilities that make things happen. So I do encourage that you download and check this out. Let me go ahead and just run it so you can get an idea. Now, each one of the different types of UI technologies is going to present the interface basically the same way. I have a grid. I can click on this, and then there's a form. We can make adjustments, click Save. The changes have been saved. Now, one thing you do need to know is that I've basically sidestepped the whole issue of persistence. Making this talk to a database kind of makes it tough to port the code. You either have to attach a database or create one, and then you have the data to deal with, and I just didn't even want to deal with all that. So basically all the data objects are created on the fly, and all of the infrastructure and the messaging that you would need in a true application that has persistence is all there, basically. But once you get down into the products repository, you can see that when you call persist, I'm basically just saying you do something here. So persistence, database access, all that kind of stuff isn't really the point of all this. The point is to be able to see how the view model patterns are implemented in this project. Now, I use the term view model kind of loosely. It doesn't really make sense in the context of MVC because it's a model view controller type of setup, but the whole idea of a view model is kind of really baked in to using MVC. Again, MVVM technically maybe doesn't really apply to a WebForms type of thing. That's probably more presentation model. But I use the term view model to be inclusive of what's found in MVVM and also what you do in presentation model, just because it's easier. So if we come in, you can take a look and see that within the web application, we have models and then view models. So the WebForms view model, basically this is what's happening here. We'll bind the grid up to the products property, which is then lazy loaded. And then we have the selected product, which is basically set to a special type that's just meant to give a view of our domain object. Then we've got a Boolean type here that tells us whether or not we have a selected product, and that will help us turn things on and off for the user on the screen. And also whether or not we want to show a message of whether persistence is successful. And so this is our view model here. Download it to check out the code in detail. But let's take a look at the code behind of our page itself, and you can see that if you've spent much time in WebForms, usually you'd have quite a bit of code in the code behind. Here we're setting up the view model. We're handling a UI event here, the selected index changed on the grid. So we're basically pulling out the product ID and sending it down to the view model. When the save button's clicked, we're basically mapping what comes from the controls into our ViewModel class and then sending that down to persist the changes. And then in pre-render, what I'm doing is grabbing the products. Again, if you remember just from a moment ago in the ViewModel, that was lazy loaded. So when we bind to this, I don't have to have a special call that says get products or do anything like that. That's all handled within the ViewModel. And then I can do a data bind at that point. And then here, I'm basically just always I'm always binding the values from my ViewModel up to my UI. So if I have a selected product, then that's going to resolve to true, and then my editor, the placeholder for my editor, will be visible. If persistence is successful, well, then I'm going to show the save complete message. And so doing this really takes out a lot of code from your view, keeps it very thin, and allows you to achieve the better testability, decoupling from UI technologies, or building a more composable type of application. So there's a little bit here to check out. Please do download the code and take a look at it. I'll give you one final demo so that you can see the pattern that's being kept throughout the different type of technologies. So if we'll take a look at the Silverlight one, we have a grid, we have an input, we have save, and then we have the save change message there. Same thing for the Ajax one. We have a grid, we have the form, and the changes are saved. So it's hopefully giving you a chance to do an apples to apples comparison. So no matter what type of technology you're using, you can sort of branch out and start using these patterns and get the benefits of using a very thin view. So again, the place you want to go to is polymorphicpodcast.com/VM workshop, where you can download and read all about it. Thanks.